Welcome to the lovely Catoctin Furnace Historic District and the Collier's House right behind me. My name is Henry Ward. I'm an archaeologist, chef, and food historian, and I've been asked today to talk with you about some of the foods that the black and white families that lived around the furnace would have eaten 50 years, 100 years, 150 years ago. If you had been able to come to this year's Maryland Iron Festival, I would have been serving you taste treats based on some research, archaeology, and also oral histories with the families who lived in this area. But this year we're going to be doing it virtually, but I'll be able to share the recipes as we go along. Without further ado, here are the recipes.
The 20th century concept of recycle, reuse, repurpose is not 20th century at all. And what a lot of the foods that people were gathering or growing or bartering, again, used things that other people might actually not have even eaten. One of the dishes that we're going to cook today is based on leftover corn. You had a barbecue and you've got some leftover corn. That could be chopped up and made into a salad, but I have a favorite recipe that was actually from my grandmother on my father's side. Her name was actually Dutch, because she was Pennsylvania Dutch from the Rinds side of the family. And so when we had leftover corn on the cob, we always knew that we were going to have corn fritters the next day. Again, dead simple recipe. You have a chicken, which means you have an egg, flour. Maybe you barter some apples to a neighbor who has a grist mill, so you have a little bit of flour, a little salt and pepper, and the corn. And you then are going to bind that together, fry it in a little bit of probably bacon grease on the hearth, and that can be made into a nice sweet breakfast food in case we're going to serve it with famous Catoctin furnace apple butter and a little bit of schmearkaes or spread cheese. It's like a spreadable cream cheese or like a sour cream. Or you can also put a little bit of green onions, a little bit more pepper into it, and serve it as a nice side dish, like fried chicken dinner with corn fritters on the side. And so the trick with this one is actually, you look at the recipe and it doesn't make any sense at all, because it's basically corn, 2 tablespoons of flour, which is not, you have not do anything, no liquid, and 2 eggs. But when you realize that you're going to separate the eggs and then beat the whites, that's going to double, triple, quadruple their volume. And all of a sudden you're going to have a lot of liquid, but a light liquid. So as you mix the corn and the other egg yolks and the little bit of flour in, you get this nice light batter that gives you a really puffy fritter that just holds together the nice sweet corn. Again, a favorite growing up from the summertime. And something to have fond memories, and again, willing to share one of my family's best recipes for eating the summer bounty, even if it's the day after. What do you cook and what do you eat when you really don't have any money at all? And let's talk about beverages. Obviously, water out of the tap was probably what most people drank. They would have also brewed beer and made cider, and those would have been made into applejack and other harder drinks. But for everyday beverage, again, coffee at this time period is going to be imported the closest place from the Caribbean. Tea is coming literally from the other side of the world, China or India. They are expensive and out of the reach of a lot of the country cooks who, again, are going to have to look more closely for what they're looking for. They do talk about making coffee out of essence, which is a liquid that's about 20% coffee, 40% chicory, and the rest sugar. But very often what they would be doing is making herbal teas or different kinds of concoctions. And this one is based on 5 different herbs and spices that are indigenous to the area and could be found in the woods right out behind the Collier's house here. Rose hips, which are formed on the rose plant after the blossom is gone, actually concentrates vitamin C into that little bulb. And so we're going to have rose hips, juniper berries, which again, juniper is very indigenous to these woods, has a nice woody sort of sweetness to it. We're going to be using peppermint. Everybody loves mint, has a nice bright flavor. The red raspberry leaves add also a bright, almost citrusy tone to it. And then finally, the red clover has a nice sort of green grassy flavor. Together, it's a very mild, caffeine-free, but uplifting beverage that could be served hot or cold. And so we're going to go ahead and grind up those spices and put them in our stoneware crock and get some water going on the hearth so that we can have tea a little bit later. And again, the vitamin C content of rose hips is astounding. Again, also are considered to be a good imperative for the blood, and mint especially is considered to be excellent for the digestion. So settling the stomach, stimulating appetite. Every herb that has a culinary use would have at least 1 or 2 medicinal uses as well. Talking about preserving the flavors of summer. Again, yesterday we had a nice picnic. Got some leftover corn on the cob. Didn't quite finish the watermelon. But not enough watermelon to really go ahead and make a meal out of. And so, is that going to go into the compost pile? Is it going to get into the trash? Or are you going to think about, is there something that we can make out of this? And so again, distant memory of my other grandmother actually making pickles out of watermelon rind. So after the pink of the melon was all gone, rather than throwing out what was left over, which is what most people would do, if you peel off the green outer rind and then carefully cut them and put them in pickling liquid of brown sugar and salt and vinegar, whatever spices you might have. In this case, we have some cloves, just a couple, one broken up cinnamon stick, and also actually a local indigenous spice called the spiceberry, Lindino benzoa, I believe, which is actually, again, a woodland plant that has a beautiful little red berry, and when they dry, it's a flavor very similar to sort of allspice. And so, again, strong Pennsylvania Dutch influence up in this area within the Catoctin Valley and at the furnace. And so again, if you're going to grow things in the summertime, you can only have them fresh for so long. You have to start to think about how you're going to preserve them, how you're going to put them up. And so pickling, get a high enough salt concentration, a high enough vinegar concentration, or a high enough sugar concentration, the liquid becomes antiseptic. It will not let bacteria grow. It will not let them ferment. And so again, pickled vegetables, pickled fruits, Pennsylvania Dutch market, you can find pickled sausages, you can find pickled pig's feet, you can find almost anything. But again, you gotta smoke it, salt it, or put it in vinegar. It's the only way it's going to last.
I hope you all have enjoyed a chance to virtually share some of the stories and some of the recipes, both from my family and from the families that would have lived and worked around Catoctin Furnace. This year we've come to you into your homes, but we're hoping that next year you can come into ours and that the festival will be up and running and you'll actually get a chance to taste some of the foods and the drinks that we talked about today. Thank you for coming and hope to see you next year. Bye.